My God, you look over there by the Dairy Queen. Every time they're pulling a trailer, they're tearing it up.
Public, good morning and welcome to the Winter Police Department, 911, PSAP, and Fire Department Committee meeting for August 23rd, 2023. Excuse me. This is the last committee before our budget retreat tomorrow on August 24th. That's when all council will be here. It is a public meeting. We'll see if we can shave $562,000 out of this budget today, guys. Justin, I'm going to let you you and your staff lead it off.
There's not really a whole lot. We just went on visiting about the budgets today, answer any questions. I don't think anything, the only things that changed were what we talked about last time. Kind of took those down to where they needed to be after what we discussed, and that's kind of where we're at. So I'll go ahead and let Mark go ahead and start.
Okay, we'll just go through item by item while we could bunch the first group together of 4110 through 4210. That's your personal services. Those I really can't reduce any spending on for next year. Legals and advertising, 4230. 500 last year, 500 this year. We've only used 122.50 this year. I think the reason for that is we've been using Indeed this year with relatively good success, and word of mouth actually worked fairly well as well here in town over the last, well, almost a year. But that's staying the same at 500. Let's see, next, repairs and maintenance. $1,000. Last year we didn't have anything in this line item. I found that this would be a good line item to use for repairs for other things beside our vehicles like handguns, tasers, body cameras, things like that.
Which line are you talking about, Mark? Let me follow.
4250?
Just the .0 line? Okay.
Yep, just the zero line.
Gotcha.
So, in the years past, everything that's a point after the 4250 was combined into 4250 instead of broken down into smaller line items or with the point system. So we put 1,000 in there just to cover repairs and maintenance that other entities do or other like businesses do for us that doesn't fit into any of the other line items. Managed IT, that's 18,000, depending on what business we go to for managed IT. That could be around that, could be less. Not exactly sure where we're at on that point. I'm hoping it'll be less than that, but as of right now, we don't know. HR testing, 850, 810 last year, just a slight increase. Vehicle repairs, 17,500 this last year, 19,000 this year. So far this year, it says we've spent 5,688. There's some bills out there, I believe, that we're still waiting for parts actually on one that's going to be fairly expensive. The reason for increase is for that our two 2020s, which we have the most issues with actually. Those no longer going to have bumper-to-bumper warranty on those. And found out, as we talked about last committee meeting, that our city shop can't really do a lot of repairs on those without them throwing codes, without the vehicles throwing codes. And they don't have the computer software system down at the city shop to read those vehicles and clear codes. So any repairs we have to do, we'll have to go to, like Frontier Ford or Hometown.
Mark, you're still doing your service though down here, like your oil
Yeah,
change?
like oil. They could do that, but any sort
Okay.
of repair they really can't do. even like last time we spoke about changing the brake pads through codes on that. It cost us, an extra $80 just to clear the codes because they don't have the programming software down there with their computers to handle that. Animal clinic, that's gonna stay the same, or I'd like it to stay the same at $500. I've actually had just one bill this year for that. Last year, I think we had one or as well, but I'd like to keep it for $500 because those can get expensive when animals are injured under our care, or if there's a stray animal that needs to be put down, things like that. I know we had to put down a horse several years ago that no one would claim. They came into town, still don't know who that belonged to. Let's see, radar, 300 was this last year. Actually, when we made the budget last year in August for 300, and we got the bill in October when they did our radar recertification, it was slightly over 400, I believe. So this year we're going to ask for 400 for radar recertification. See, new line item on the 4250.6 and .7, sprinkler inspection and fire alarm inspection. Those in the past were handled by, the cost was handled by the jail. Now we're splitting them up as they should have been. So $195 for the sprinkler inspection, and the fire alarm inspection is $1225. Supplies, in the past prior to 2023, those were grouped in just one of the 4261. We weren't on the point system up until this last year. I'll do that again this year. So annual memberships, $300. There is two that we paid this year. One was $125, or excuse me, $150, and there's actually another $150 as well. I might have put that in some other line item, but there is two, so that will be $300. Uniforms, let's see, $32.50 was budgeted this last year, or for this year. I've already went way over that with the addition of 4 new officers in the last 8 months, well, since end of last November. And so we've been over that. I don't expect 4 new officers in next year. Well, I hope not anyway. But the increase to $72.50 is because we need new vests for those new officers that we have. Right now, a couple of them don't have vests. A couple are wearing old vests that actually are either right towards the end of their lifespan, where they should be taken out of service. They're only good for a certain number of years, so they're right at the end of that lifetime, and they're kind of worn out, and they actually had some sewing done to repair one of them. But so that's where that increase comes from, getting some new body armor for the 4 that need it. Vehicle supplies, keeping that at $1,000. That's just for your windshield wiper, minor odds and ends that we could do just right at the police department, light bulbs or headlight bulbs, things like that. Office desk supplies, $6,200 was last year. We dropped that down to $55.75. Ammunition, slight increase with that from last year's of $34.56 this year at $36.82. That's just, there was a little bit of increase with the prices that they have this year over last year. Dog food, slight increase with that. It's just a little bit more expensive, I've seen. Fuel, that's gone down. We haven't used as much fuel this year as expected, just because of our low numbers of officers. So while they are training other officers, there's two per vehicle, 2 officers per vehicle instead of 2 vehicles driving around. So less fuel being spent, and the cost we're expecting per gallon to go down next year as well. So that has gone down, $7,358. Travel conference, maintaining that at $3,000. Haven't used much this year, just because we didn't have the officers to send, and the officers we did have were busy training new officers. So no schools or trainings that we've been able to go to or send our officers to for that. Utilities, that went up quite a bit. Just the cost increase, and hopefully moving over to the halfway house is the reason for that, I believe. DARE, we're sitting pretty good with our DARE supplies. Hopefully there's not a whole lot that our DARE officer, DARE instructor will need. So drop that from 500 to 300. Equipment, let's see. Last year, 3,500. This year, 6,342. That extra almost 3,000 is with the addition of 2 computers. I'd like to get more. We would really need 6 or 7 for if every officer had their own computer when we make the move. But we'll just start out with 2. Tasers, that'll be the same. Just a addition of a taser and maintenance of what we have, and purchase of cartridges for the tasers. We need, Rough Mobil's supposed to have a couple for each officer for recertification every year. So those are, if we get like 20 cartridges, that'll be $667 or something along those lines, if I remember correctly. Computer software, nothing in that. Then our OmniGo, that's gone up as well this year. So that makes us sit at $1,023,431. Questions, concerns?
I'll start.
You guys understand too, with the OmniGo thing, you'll see the same price on dispatches, and then you will see it doubled on the jail. That is the computer program that the entire LEC uses, so it gets split out. The police department pays a quarter of it, dispatch pays a quarter of it, and then the LEC, or the jail, pays 50% of it.
My question is, managed IT. It's technology. You don't need to go to bid. Do you have your quotes? These prices, we hear that they could be lower, they could be higher, that you're getting quotes. Really need a decision before tomorrow. So do you have all that information in your quotes to make that decision, where you can give council a decision to say, I don't want to hear, it could be quite a bit less. You guys have been working on quotes. It's time to hear that information, and we need to know what direction you're going and what it's going to cost us, because if that's 12,000 instead of where your quotes come in, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, Just, 18,000 to 12,000 is 6,000. That's substantial. We as a council, this council needs to know what direction you're going, what the cost is going to be. And if you have those quotes, it's not a bid process. This is what we need to hear tomorrow in that retreat. You're going to go with this quote at this rate, and this is what it's going to cost, because we budgeted 7% across the city CPI. You're showing 9.1% increases. This might bring you down to that 7% where you're in parameters. I think you need to give us a decision, because I've heard that in corrections, and it's a big line. hear now in the police department, and I'm guessing I'm gonna hear it in the PSAP. All told, between the three departments, if it was 80, I think it's getting close to 80,000 in managed IT, 60,000 in those three departments. But if your quotes come in lower and there's an actual savings to the city over what you're putting into this number, I don't want to tie those funds up in a budget. I'd like to know what that number is and let's roll. Because 20,000 right now is, if it's 20, if it's 10, it's that much easier on these guys when they're cutting. I think you've done the work. We got to make a decision. There's an old saying, or get off the pot. Did I bleep?
You did, good job.
That's one of my concerns. The other thing tomorrow that I think you need to look for, just kind of prepping Mark. I was taking a look at your legals and advertisements.
You have the same questions I do.
Maybe. The budget was 500, you're at 122.50. Can we get by with going to 250 or 350 or 400? Because if we have 2,000 lines that we save $100 on, that's $200,000 that doesn't go into this budget that helps these guys with that project. As Justin called it, Justin called this, he tabbed this term back in 20, I think. It's the scalpel. Don't let the axe get to you, and we all know who the axe is at this point. You guys need to go in here and see, and I'd really like you guys to come with these numbers tomorrow, every department, where if you can get by with going with 400 in this line, 39 instead of 4,000 in this line, really button it up and manage it, not put, that's float in there.
And that's kind of one of those things that we've been trying to track too, where our last hires have been coming from. And it's not so much the traditional ways that it's always been
Sure.
around here.
Right.
We're seeing a lot
yeah.
more success from,
I'm not, how you operate, that's fine. There was another line you mentioned, it was a little over 400 this year, so we thought we'd budget 400. Part of that scalpel process is if council's gonna ask me to take 250 from this line, and I actually need 450 and I only put 400 in there, do yourself justice, really finite this in. And you know what? At the end of next year, it's not gonna be perfect. We're gonna be wrong in some areas, but try to dial it in. And the scalpel process, if it gets us $100 and 2,000 lines, that 565 deficit becomes 365. It opens up some things for council.
My question is, why did utilities double
I
almost?
can give you an answer to that. I asked the questions. They officially took over paying for the dog pound this year. Before that, surprise, surprise, the jail was paying for the dog pound. Doesn't quite make sense. They are not paying for the halfway house. The halfway house is still being paid for by corrections at this point in time. The only thing they pay utilities on is their cell phones, their dog pound, and their speed trap signs. I call them speed trap signs because they trap me every time. You guys know what they are.
Speed notification.
I get high score
electronic
every
speed
time.
boards.
So that's what their
Conviction.
utilities are on. They have never paid for the dog pound before. As we know, all utilities were crazy high in every department this year because of December, January, February, and March being insanely cold. So that's where that came from on the utilities.
We saw it citywide, even on the residential.
Yep.
Commercial side, those 3 months.
Our revenue saw it too.
Yeah, no, that's where you see it.
Yeah. I have 2 questions, one of which you've already touched on,
Jody.
Mayor.
Jody.
I agree with you on the legals and advertisements with the way that they're doing them. I mean, you're full 7 months into the year, used 122.50. We know that they have been advertising, they're using a different way. To me, that would be the place to cut $200, put it to $300, and then if they are short-staffed, that's a perfect thing that qualifies. If their bottom line's not coming in, I mean, if it's gonna go over, that's what qualifies for contingency, if we have contingency, or you've got cash out there available for it too. But if we're not spending it, then maybe we should budget accordingly. The same on the animal clinic. Over the last 3 years, we've spent a total of $553 at the animal clinic. So to me, putting $500 in there doesn't quite make sense, because that's not a guarantee every year situation, that's a per instance situation. And please understand, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take a little bit more of Jeremy's role on some of this, because I am trying to help them find in every budget, including my own, where to find those $100, $200 so that we can get closer to where we need to be.
I truly think in legals and advertising, we could, I mean, Mark, ultimately it's your decision, but I think that could go down to 250 right off the bat with the other avenues that we're using. And I guess I'm seeing the same type of response in the jail as well as dispatch with openings there too.
But like radar, I found it, radar you said was a little over 400 last year. Don't budget 400 if it's a little over. If we're gonna take from legals and advertisements, make sure you have enough to cover your radar. Go 450 on that.
Gotcha.
And it's really close. I see that, Mark. It's really close, but I think all I want you guys to understand today, and I'm not beating up on this budget because I think you guys have all done a good job. If there's 100, I keep going back to that. If there's 200 lines that have $100 in them in this budget, or 2,000 lines, 200 becomes 200,000. It makes a big difference. Just the little things make a difference. And I'm telling you to take where you need to take. Andrea, I'm telling you this in advance as you go through yours. Just look at it. Tomorrow's a long day. We have some ideas, but you could really help this process if you look into those little things. Council, I spoke when I should have been listening, but I had those questions. The big one to me was IT and the scalpel, but Ron started. If you have any other questions, please have the floor.
I've said before, you, city managers that we hire to manage these budgets on a daily basis. You know, we're lay people, we come, we have our meetings, we don't work within your departments every day. You people know, just to back up what the mayor was saying, you people know where some of, you know, where we could save $100, $200 on these lines without putting a big hindrance upon your department, you know what I mean? I mean, you guys are there every day, you know exactly what's going on. We don't. I mean, I look at this and yes, it's simple for me to say, oh, well, yeah, we'll take 500 off of here. But in doing so, I don't know how that's gonna impact your mission and your work down there. And, you know, the last thing we wanna do is hinder that. You guys do a good job. So, I mean, when the mayor says, you know, $100, $200 a line helps, that's all I'll say too, is that it does help. It really does help. It seems, you know, with $1 million budget, it seems a pittance, but it helps when you look at the huge picture. But I feel like this is a pretty tight budget. I don't, you know, myself, I don't see a lot of fluff in here, but there's some things that we could tighten down. And better you than us is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Better you than us. We might make a move that's gonna hinder your operation. We don't wanna do that. So, there you go. There's
Well, we
my little speech.
find other ways outside the budget to not spend, not spend our budget money, for example, like uniforms.
Yes.
Some officers feel more comfortable now that we have vests, and if they always wear their vest outside of their uniform shirts, do they really need a uniform shirts? And I've had officers ask me, well, can I buy my own shirts and just give me patches?
Yes,
Oh, heck yeah, that'll save us money. Things like that, or things that are,
yeah.
machinery or whatnot that's getting pretty close to end of service. Well, is there a way that we could hold on for a little bit longer to keep these things going? Is there things that have been thrown out that, like I've scavenged parts off of chairs and whatnot and add them to other things, instead of buying new chairs? Well, I'll just take the wheels off of this one, and we have a broken wheel on this other chair, and I got a box full of caster wheels that I could use and whatnot. So there's things like that that we have been doing to save money, but I'll keep taking the scalpel. I'll take the scalpel to as many of these things that I believe that we could get by on and
Yep.
cut her some more.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Have you guys all seen the agenda for tomorrow?
Not yet.
I just saw the email this morning, so,
Okay.
yeah, I'll get it sent out. to
You're not
everybody.
end of day anymore.
Actually, I just pulled it up.
You're
Yeah,
like
it looks like at 10:40,
midnight.
10 noon.
We're morning-ish, okay. I liked end of day better when you guys were already sick of it, and it was like, yeah, just get out.
Well, streets and sanitation is end of day, so.
Go ahead, Andrea.
All right, like Mark talked about, personal services. It's kind of what it is there. I know it's definitely an increase from last year, but I can't help that, I guess. The insurance line, it's not only the insurance that we pay, but it's also our notaries come out of there. Last meeting, I think I changed that. We went from 5 notaries to 4. So that came down a little bit last meeting. So that 570 that you see there, that is the cost of 4 new notaries. Well, 520, because the $50 is for insurance. Legals and advertisements,
Where do you see 520? I'm sorry, we have 470.
it's supposed to be 570.
Okay.
$50 for, $50 for the insurance, the SDP. I'm gonna forget the abbreviations now. Thank
Did you guys catch that? Line 4210 is 570 instead of 4.
Yep.
So while she's looking for that, let's continue on through your budget.
So legals and advertisements, we have $400 in that line, down from $600 that we budgeted for this year. The $400 that I have budgeted there is to advertise 2 times in the multi-state wide, I don't know, is it like a magazine or publication that goes out? I think there's 5 or 6 states included in that. I budgeted for it twice. It's 2 weeks each time, I want to say. We've used it in the past. I would not necessarily say successfully, I guess. Could we come down there? Sure. Having only budgeted for it twice, coming down there, my concern is the fact that we don't have access to any contingency funds. Like Chandra brought up with the PD, if we come down there and something happens and we go over, we don't have that. So, could we potentially get by? Sure. And I'm not opposed to taking that down to advertising there once, just because we haven't used them, but it seems like the PD's had more success using other avenues that we've been utilizing for free, as far as I'm aware up to this point. So it's highly probable that we can make adjustments on that line there. That's where my concern comes, is the fact that if something does come up, there's no cushion for us there. Moving on to repairs and maintenance, I budgeted $200 in 4250.0, just because most of our repairs and maintenance is broke down into different points, and almost everything's covered there. We just budgeted $200 for in the event that we have to bring someone in who's not budgeted elsewhere. We just, a little extra there. Managed IT, we touched on that. We'll make those adjustments. HR and employment testing, background checks, pre-employment UAs, random UAs, and what's the other one? The physicals. 4 new employees is what I budgeted for 2024. I think for 2023, we did 5. I think 24, 4 will be fair. B&L Communications, this one I came down from 2,000 that we have budgeted for this year down to 1,500. It's one of those lines that we haven't spent any money out of up to this point. We're actually doing our P25 tower upgrade this week. That's happening. I actually got back to work this morning and I have a voicemail from B&L. So I don't know, that's one of those things that as we make this upgrade, there's definitely the potential there that we're gonna have to have them come down and see us and help us fix some things. For the most part, we're ready and compliant for that move. We paid for that out of other budgets, but when they come, it gets expensive quick, moving antenna and stuff like that. We're just not sure what that's gonna look like yet. Audiology Associates, that's our hearing tests for our new employees. Again, I budgeted for 4 new hires, $120, that's the same we had for this year. Golden West Cybertech and Direct Technologies, I need to add them to that. $2,000 is what we have budgeted for this year.
Is this for break fix?
Break fix, yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're very close to about halfway through the year and, okay, hold on, I gotta look at this here. Cause I think my numbers are wrong on my sheet. Nope, that's what we've got. Okay. So we're about halfway through the year and very close to halfway through that budget. We'd like to leave that as is, if that's a possibility. Language line, this is one that we've talked about since the beginning of the year, because that definitely caught us off guard. We budgeted $50 for this year, and up to this point, we've spent $522 out of that line with the storms and stuff at the end of last year and beginning of this year. We definitely utilized that service a lot. So what I did is I took a 3-year average for the last 3 years and then came up from that just a little bit to get to that $200 that we're requesting for 24. Language line, it's definitely something that we're seeing more and more use, even regardless of the snowstorms that we had. Just people coming and going through the area that don't necessarily, English not being their first language, it makes it a lot easier for us. Supplies. Sorry, I was looking at that line wrong. The request this year is for $1,000 for miscellaneous supplies, that being cleaning supplies and things of that nature. We're a little over halfway through the year and a little over halfway through the budget, so I think that number's fairly spot on there. Uniforms, we've talked about, we bought new uniforms for all of the employees at the end of last year, so those should be okay. We've just budgeted for 3 shirts for 4 new hires. That's including the embroidery that we have done. Office supplies, I think we're pretty spot on with that this year, so we're requesting the same again for next year. Fuel, the cost per gallon went down. I figured it the same way I did for this year. We don't make many trips where we're covering fuel costs. We're not in a vehicle much, but it does happen. The travel conference school, we had big cut there. I think this year we had $2,000 budgeted for that. So the $387 that I have there is for power phone recertifications is, we'll have, I think it's 3 employees that have to recertify next year, and that would be the cost for those.
What about the cost for the fuel for employees to go up to the training and pier?
That's what I was just looking at. Apparently I did not. I'm gonna have to double check that. I don't know if I factored that in as part of fuel. But we would pay it out of the travel part, right?
Depends on if you're using a city vehicle or not. So if you're using a city vehicle, it comes out of fuel. If they're using their personal vehicle, it comes out of travel, conference, and schools, because you're reimbursing them.
Okay. Cause I think I just figured it all as part of fuel. We try to use the city vehicle as long as it's available.
Well, like it's not our van anymore. The van is not available for schools anymore. It's my understanding Justin has said that his vehicle is available for schools now.
Right.
That thing's a gas hog.
Well, and that, you know, it's, my vehicle has always been available for, you know, running to schools and stuff like that. Yeah, if dispatch needed to use it, we're talking 2 weeks, so,
Right.
yeah, that's fine. You know, we have no problem with that, or whatever vehicle. We got some down there, so. I just need to know so I can take out what should not be in there going to various schools, so.
I will double check on that, cause yeah, you're right. I figured that all as part of fuel and not part of the travel if we have to do reimbursements. Utilities, I brought down a little bit from this year, just based on what we've been paying already. Moving forward, I think $6,000 will cover our utility costs. Miscellaneous equipment, we talked about replacing monitors in the dispatch center. We've got quite a few of them that are getting that image burn that makes it hard to, our mapping and that kind of stuff, especially because they're on all the time, so it's hard on them. And then I would like to get 2 backup UPSs to put in there. Like we've talked about before, all the ones that we have are kind of nearing end of life and need replacing. So we've had extra ones in dispatch that we've shuffled around into other areas of the building to replace ones that are no longer working. And so we don't have any backups currently, other than the 4 that are obviously hooked up. So if one of those goes down, we'd be in trouble. And then the computer software portion, that $330, 4341.0. Again, that is a number that most likely is going to be covered as part of managed IT once that decision's been made. So that is probably money that will not need to be budgeted in that line. And then Omnigo, Omnix, PowerPhone, Central Square, those are all programs that are a crucial part of functioning as a PSAP. Omnigo being our CAD system. Omnix is our connection to the state where we run all of our driver's licenses and vehicles and things like that. PowerPhone, that one, I think we talked about that last meeting though. We came down from 3,200 to 450 on that one. So we're gonna not get the additional training this, for 2024. We'll wait and see if we can bring that back up for 25. But that's our EMD certifications that the state requires we have. And then Central Square, that is our 911 mapping system. And that's the quoted number that I received from them with no changes to our services.
Managed IT. You're good. Breathe. Question, council? I don't know.
Called Darren this morning, he said he got tied up in a walk-in cooler, asked if he needed help, and I don't think he saw the joke right at first, but then he informed me that he is fine, but he will not be able to make it here this morning. So, I did ask him where he ended up being able to get to on that equipment line and dialing in and getting actual quotes. He said, he feels plumb confident in being down around that 24, 26 on that one. So that was the change that he had on that, and we can discuss that further tomorrow.
You said 26,000?
Yeah, 24 to 26, so you wanna put 26 on
That's a big one, but the elephant in the room. Capital outlay and a down payment. Council, you have got to look at $50,000 in this budget. And I'm gonna ask our finance officer, when we finance, and she's gotta be part of this conversation, we're gonna have to have the down payment. And obviously, the more we can pay on it, the better. But anytime you're talking about a $1.1 million piece of equipment, that's gonna tie up a lot of funds, or we can do it when we need it in a loan. To put $50,000 a year away for capital outlay, we've looked at other areas. You know, in code enforcement, I would like to leave 100,000 like we did in there for the removal of dilapidated properties and stuff like that, but we have to just, and I'm not saying we have to make cuts. I'm not saying you have to eliminate this. You can put something away towards a down payment, but to put 50,000 a year when we're 562,000 short is, we're not being responsible to the budget, and we're starting to spend out of cash. We can either take it out of here or leave it in here and spend from unappropriated cash to supplement this budget, or we can balance it, put a down payment in there, and that unappropriated cash is available when you have to make that decision. When we know, I don't even know that we have a quote yet. It's tough to get a quote on a ladder truck right now. We don't actually know. We're just shooting into the dark. So I'm asking you, I know a lot of you have, and I do too, I see the need. I was on Main Street when those buildings were on fire. This is near and dear to a couple councilmen, but we owe the public a balanced budget, and if that becomes 10,000 for the next 5 years and we have a $50,000 down payment, that's more than a lot of people would put down on a used car or a new car. And financing, we're hoping we have our constitutional debt load down to about 16 to 12% in the next year, 2 years. You have the room. Our constitutional debt load right now is 5.5.
Right now, you have at the end of this
Total
year, you'll have a
max.
little over $1 million worth of borrowing power. You're at 60, at the end of this year, 67-ish%, I think.
What's our max capacity on borrowing power? Constitutional debt limit, I thought it was like 5.5. And not to kick the can totally down the street, we can do an outlay and start putting some away, but $40,000, 35, 45, heck, all 50 is a lot. It's 10% of our deficit right now.
So at the end of this year, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong numbers there. So at the end of this year, you're at 63% of your capital debt percentage. Your amount that counts against you is 4.3 right now. Total city debt though is 5.7 because we've got some other things out there. So we have a little over $2 million worth of borrowing power. Remember, when you are talking about this in the electric committee, they talked about the big bucket truck. And when they looked at the lease option versus the loan option through Altech, it actually saved the city several $1,000s to do
The
the
lease.
loan versus the lease.
Oh, the loan is cheaper.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was Kurt's recommendation at that time to do the loan. That's only $250,000-ish. I mean, that's not gonna, it does affect you because it is ours at that time. So when a city purchases a piece of equipment, obviously it's always beneficial if you have a down payment because that's less that you're borrowing and less that you're paying in interest. But our current bank that we use for that, which is Kansas State Bank, doesn't require that for us. So you could borrow the full amount purchase price if you wanted to. You could put some away for a down payment, or when it's time to purchase, you can look to see what you have in cash. Because all this outlay is really doing,
Is a down
it's
payment.
a smoke and mirrors. You don't actually have the revenues in this budget to support the outlay under general fund. You know that you're gonna have to bring some from electric, from corrections, from wherever to support the general fund. So it's a smoke and mirrors. In all reality, as long as you as council don't allow your department heads within the general fund to spend all of their cash, you have cash to be able to put a down payment on this. We're not that strapped. So potentially it may make more sense to take this out of the budget. The only thing that this does in the budget is when you set an outlay for 60 months, you're guaranteeing that that's all that money can be spent on is for that. Versus if it's in cash, anyone could come and ask for it at any point in time. And then you forget that you were wanting to have a down payment. That's the only problem, is you have to remember and pass on to those who come after you that, hey, some of this cash. Or you could do a supplemental budget, put so much into this outlay for when you are ready to buy this out of cash and not put it into this in particular budget. So let's say you want to create a new money market account or CD or whatever, and you say you want to start earning interest on $100,000 out of your cash that's specifically going to be for a down payment in 4 years on the fire truck. That is possible as well.
You don't have to make a decision today. Ron, I know you're gonna be gone tomorrow, so you can have that conversation today on thoughts and feelings with the voting members that will be here, or have it today.
I know the budget is tight. I know last year we had budgeted for some for the ladder truck.
Yep.
We cut it out last year.
Yep.
I feel, we can't keep cutting it clear out. I mean, we've got to have something. Well, like you said, Jody, any down payment's better than nothing. And that's just my feeling, and I know the truck's in good condition and everything, it's just getting repairs for it that are getting obsolete. And otherwise, if we was, say, at least cut it in half maybe and still put 25,000 towards it, whether you put it in a CD deal or whatever to draw interest on it. I wouldn't have a problem with something like that.
Interesting.
I mean, that's just my feeling. I don't want to see it cut completely out.
I don't get a vote. I'm just making a recommendation on balancing the budget.
Well, and I won't be heard, so.
Right, so
That's,
your fellow councilmen need to know your opinion, and then they will tomorrow. The other thing I look at, I'm gonna go to equipment, back up to, there's 31,000 in the .0 line, and then below in .1, you have 2,000, .2, 10,000, .3, 4,000. That's a total of $47,000 in there. And I know at one point the AEDs were in there. And I picked up in the testimony that we had that day, and somebody pointed it out to me also, the AEDs are for the firemen when they're in a stream situation, making sure it's a safety feature. In the city of Winter, the ambulance is always there, and they have AEDs. On the rural fires, the ambulance is not there, and that's where these would be used. But city trucks that we pay for don't go out on there, so that should almost be a county expense rather than the city of Winter expense.
And I
So I'm not
looked at
comfortable
that as
with
well.
this.
They do carry AEDs on that truck as well. I think there's AEDs on every
it's on the
truck.
rural, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's AEDs on the rural, but I think there's AEDs on every truck.
We have two
If-
trucks.
If I'm not mistaken, like F1 is the one that responds to whether it's city or rural. It responds first. I believe that's on that truck. So that is going to county and city fire both.
And that's our truck. The F1.
Well, that truck, F1, is actually a county truck.
Yeah, this is not ours.
Gotcha.
Ours do not leave city limits unless it's to help another city.
So
No,
I
that's the
thi- I-
city pumper, and the ladder truck can't leave city limits unless, but this is F1 is what they,
Yeah, the
first
county
response
purchased
truck, basically, and it's a rural, or
How-
county truck,
How many total trucks? 6?
6 or 7.
7? I thought 6, but I could be wrong. You
I'd
count
have
them.
to count them.
Count them, Ron. I don't know.
It's been a while.
But I think this number reflected 6 AEDs. I'm comfortable with 2.
No, this number only had the 2 AEDs in there. It wasn't to replace all of them, because the county
AEDs
trucks, that would be a county
AEDs
expense.
are 15,500 apiece.
No, there was a lot more stuff in there than just
Oh.
those. Yeah, no, this was not just AEDs.
Okay.
No, this was other stuff as well. And that's where, before tomorrow, Darren and we need to sit down and I want to see that list of everything that will include.
AEDs are around, brand new, they're around 1,200. We just quoted a refurbished one for the recycle center. And
How
I
much? 12?
believe it, yeah, I believe the refurbished one was right around $700 and some dollars.
I think
that
the
are
ones we
together.
have, I think they were like 1,800 if I'm not.
A lot of questions, and I hope council has a lot of questions, because that's 81,000 right there. That represents right around 15% of what we need to cut. I'm not saying we have to cut it all here, but we have to have serious discussions about this 81,000. This is one of the areas that we've had the least amount of discussion and input, so.
This is just me maybe thinking out loud, so you guys can shut me down if you want. But what if you only put 10,000 in the outlay? And then you come back in after this budget is set and you do a supplemental to put a specific amount out of cash into that same outlay to get that up. And then you still have the outlay for 5 years of $10,000 a year on top of what's already in there. Then you have that much more as a down payment. So it wouldn't be part of this budget process.
I think, I'm just gonna interject. Anytime that unappropriated cash is almost like your savings account, some people would call it the retirement. The contingency, we've dubbed as check overdraft protection. That's the conversations I've had. Contingencies like overdraft protection, your savings, to take that out, and you can move it at any time, but to put it over there, and let's say there's so many things that are up in the air, from a water transmission line that we hear that's bad, that's probably good, to a transformer that I was out there with the engineers. Could go at any time. We're gonna have to shut it down. Hopefully it works to change the oil. Hasn't been changed in 15 years. The truck, the ladder truck, we may need to replace that at 1.1 million. We're talking 7-figure deals. The unappropriated cash is, and we know at the end of this budget, there's probably gonna be, according to the Public Works Director, 300,000-400,000 that are gonna go back. Our transfers will come in from this year at the end of the budget. And our unappropriated cash is gonna be in a good spot. I don't think you ever just tie it up. I think you have to understand, like you'd said earlier, Chandra, whether it's this council, future council, that's why there needs to be continuity in council. People wanna wipe out, at times you hear the comments, wipe them all out. Well, there's gotta be that continuity, so part of the council remembers, yep, we're talking about being prepared for a ladder truck, 1 million. If we go to buy it, move it then, the 100,000. I wouldn't tie it up, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
Is avoid from tying it up in a budget, and it may or may not get used.
I guess anytime you do an outlay, yes, you are saying that that money is set aside for a specific purpose. But council can, at any point in time, if something comes up, by resolution, revert that outlay. So if your water line does crash, you can say, just kidding, we've got to cancel this outlay for this ladder truck, our water lines are more important. I guess when I was saying create this outlay plus the cash, putting it into some type of savings so that we can earn the extra interest on it too for that.
Can you put
specific
your
purpose.
unappropriated cash in a interest-bearing account?
Not if it's not for a specific purpose. And the reason being, so our checking account is interest bearing. So we are technically earning some interest,
Right.
but it's very low interest on our checking account. But if you just push it over there, then anytime you need to withdraw it every single year, your mill and overlay goes over, whatever, then there could potentially be, depending on what type of account you put it into, there could be penalties for withdrawing it early type of deal. So those are always things you gotta think about. Currently, the money market that we have out there for our electric department reserve, there is no penalty for withdrawal early. So that is nice, but because there's no penalty, we have a lower interest rate on it as well. So all of those are things to think about.
Good discussion. Different angles. This is definitely an area that will be talked about tomorrow. What time is fire department tomorrow?
12:30.
12:30, perfect. Everybody will be having a full stomach. They'll be groggy and
I'll be thinking of you.
you'll be thinking of us. Is your trip a good trip? Is it a good trip?
Yeah, we're kind of up in arms right now. All I said is, I want to get out of here tonight before tomorrow.
Yeah, you can go ahead and